All right, guys, welcome back to another Planet Soccer podcast. Planet Soccer show. Most of you guys are probably watching on YouTube right now. This is the USA Wales recap match day 1. US won, Wales won, unfortunately. This was
Unfortunately, but not surprisingly.
I would say
I think
this
we
is.
fooled ourselves in the first half.
I think this is the outcome I went into the game probably expecting. The first half was promising. We'll get into that in just a minute, but midday game today. Most of you who watched it probably watched it at work or while working simultaneously. Dylan, what were your lineup thoughts in this one? Let's just go ahead and get into the starting 11.
So strictly on the starting 11, I thought I was super pleased with Triple G.
Yeah,
I mean, I saw that lineup and I went, I don't know what I would have changed. It feels weird leaving Gio Reyna out, but I do think you could argue that this is the best starting 11 we could put forward for the style of play Berhalter plays, and we could talk at nauseum. I mean, we try and we're going to try and keep these recaps to a half an hour, but we could talk for an hour and a half about Berhalter and his formation strategy moving forward. But at this point, it is a lost cause. He is our manager. We have to make the most of it, and I think that starting 11 was the best way to make the most of it. I was very pleasantly surprised to see Tim Ream starting at that second center back position. That's something that going into the tournament I really, really wanted to see and was very doubtful that we would see it. So I was pleasantly surprised with overall that starting 11 that Triple G put out. And we will probably spend over half of this podcast questioning some of his decisions, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least give a little credit for that starting 11, because I think you, myself, and most of U.S. men's national team Twitter, if you will, we're very pleased and happy with that starting 11 selection.
Yeah, I think the big standouts were Tim Ream and then Josh Sargent being a surprise start up top to many. I feel we'll just go ahead and kind of run down the lineup and go player by player, give thoughts on them if we need to. I think that's kind of the way to start instead of just talking about game flow. We can kind of implement game flow talk into talking about the players. But with Josh Sargent, I unfortunately don't feel as though his style of play suits this setup. I think you want a big Pepe or Haji Wright type of number 9 because this team builds up a lot on the wings. They swing crosses in. That is their buildup. It's on the wings. And Sargent, he made a really good hold-up play on that goal. He got it to Pulisic, and then Pulisic, obviously. I just said Pulisic 2 different ways, back-to-back. Pulisic with
Nobody knows how to say it. It's fine.
Awesome through ball to Timothy Weah, and Weah, calm, cool, and composed, put it home. Sargent was okay. I think his SOFA score rating was around a 6.4, which I'm pretty dubious on SOFA score ratings, but it gives you a general idea. He didn't do much inside the box or anything like that. So
yeah, he had a really nice opportunity in like the 10th minute. And he went, I don't want to say quiet after that, because like you said, he was part of the buildup in that goal. But as far as him and attacking opportunities, they pretty much were non-existent after that really, really nice look at header. And really, I don't put it on him not finishing that. He was in the right position. Very tough angle to net that header.
Yeah, that's not the type of goal he scores either.
Right. And that's just what you were saying. That's just not the style of guy we need there. And but in his defense, on that individual play, I don't know if there's anybody on this men's national team roster that would have scored it. He put himself in the best position to have an opportunity and won that opportunity, just couldn't finish. But outside of that, and that hold-up play, we didn't really see a ton out of him, which was disappointing because I was excited to see him get that selection. Nothing against Jesus Ferreira. I think he's likely who we see against England, and I think he may fit this team a little bit better, but I think Sargent, without a doubt, earned and deserved a chance to start in this World Cup. So I was very happy to see Berhalter give him that opportunity, and it was an opportunity I would not have put money on Berhalter giving him, especially in the first World Cup game. I would have expected him to go more traditional, more conservative Berhalter starting 11, and that's why I was really pleased from the get in that selection. As well as that center back selection. And it seemed early on to work in our favor in that first half.
Yeah, that's pretty much what you can say on Sargent. Moving over to the wings, I think we can talk about both of them simultaneously, at least the starters. I thought Pulisic and Weo obviously were both very good. They both had the goal contributions. They did what they could. I think knowing that they're going to be responsible for anything in the final third, you don't get a whole lot out of Adams, Musa, and McKinney in that zone 17, 18, 19. It's on Wea and Pulisic, who are both typically inverted wingers, which is tough when you don't have a 10 that can slide into those spots. And
well, we do,
yeah, but that's not the system. So I think they played. They contributed to that goal. I think they both got banged up later in the game, so it silenced them a little bit. One of the subs on the wing is definitely a question that you and I both had. I don't know how you're Greg Berhalter and you're looking at that game in the 75th minute or whatever, and you say, Jordan Morris is exactly what this game needs on the wing. He's what we need to really put ourselves over the top. He came in for Wea, I believe. I think he did. And I just don't know how you don't bring in Reyna there. But speaking to Pulisic and Wea, I think they contributed a goal contribution, which is what you need out of them. So overall, I thought they were all right.
Yeah, no, they certainly contributed a very nice goal. It was a beautiful ball from Pulisic. Very sound, solid finish by Wea. Pretty much what you expect out of those two in that situation. However, I think Pulisic left a bit to be desired from me throughout the rest of the game, especially in that second half. I didn't see a lot of progressive buildup from him like we saw in that first half. I think part of that can be attributed to Berhalter. And some of the tactical decisions that he made. Speaking specifically to Jordan Morris over Reyna, that tells me he was okay with the draw. And perhaps that will be the right call moving down the line. Perhaps this is a group after we saw Canada, after we saw England put up the first match performance that we did, seeing a 4-goal advantage, 6 goals for, like, maybe it is just a group that is not there to be won, and he was doing everything he could to not lose the game. And that is certainly a strategy. It's not the strategy I think either of us would have employed, or anybody on Twitter or any of the pundits. I think there were a lot of questions to be asked. Can't believe maybe we should have recorded this earlier for more hot takes. Maybe I've calmed down in the last 45 minutes. But I'm willing to reserve judgment on some of these decisions until we see how the group played out.
It's too late at that point, though. That's how I feel about it.
It certainly is. But if we see a Reyna masterclass in the next 2 matches and he's fully fit, and sure, maybe Triple G knew what he was doing and we're all just silly quote unquote pundits. But I think at this point we all are very warranted in our questioning and our concerns when it does come to Berhalter and some of his decisions. So I think that's why that Morris substitution specifically will draw a lot of questions, because I do think Reyna, that is not Reyna's naturally best position, but that is the position he's been asked to slide into in this men's national team, and he's done so with success thus far. So I do seriously have questions about the decision, but I'm trying to reserve judgment. It was a disappointing 1-1. But coming into it, if you told me we drew Wales, I don't think I'd hate it. I just think we all hate it because of the way it happened and optically how that match looked.
Yeah.
And some of those decisions that were made. So I will, for the next, what are we at, 5 days, give him a temporary pass on some of these decisions. But it is certainly something that we could very likely in a week's time come back to and point to as like, this is where it started to go wrong in some of those substitution decisions.
Yeah, I suppose I'm still pretty upset over not seeing Giovanni Reyna at all. I feel like granted, this game, if you lose it, you almost have no shot at advancing. If you draw it, it's still a coin flip. If you win it, you're absolutely in the driver's seat, because it feels like, especially watching Iran play this morning, it is going to come down to the U.S. and Wales. Now it kind of feels like who loses to England by less or who beats Iran by more, which it feels like it's going to come down to goal differential. I don't know. Let's get into the midfield, and I love the U.S. midfield. I really do, but it's three midfielders that just feel like they do a lot of the same thing. Tyler Adams is a little bit more of an engine. He's a little bit more of a number 6. Musa he's not put in the position to succeed, I feel like, and he still shows that really, really young. He just seems naive on the ball sometimes. The potential, you can tell, is obviously there. And then Weston McKennie, I just don't know what he's doing sometimes. It's like,
he's there.
Yeah, he's just there sometimes. And I don't feel as though him being restricted to one side of the field is the best way, but you can't play like a 6 and 8 and then a 10 all in one line as your midfield, because you're going to get burnt when you have the fullbacks that we do with the no depth. I don't know. The midfield was just there to me today. Tyler Adams they were all over the place. If you look at their heat maps, they're not really restricted to one side of the field. Musa and McKennie definitely lean towards their side. Adams, as he is with Leeds, is just all over the pitch. His heat map's incredible. But it just feels like they don't have a defined role on this team. There was a little to no build up through the middle, which you expect out of the U.S. side. I think they were like 50-50 down the right and the left, and then had like 10% build up through the middle. Which is kind of frustrating, because you do have these young explosive players in the midfield that you could utilize, and then it gives Pulisic a lot more opportunity to be more inverted and to be more of a playmaker in and around the box, which he isn't. He's not an Ivan Perisic swinging the ball in from the wing. That's not what he does best. So I don't know. The midfield is what it is in this system, and I think they're never going to put up 9 ratings, because they're just not put in the position to. But I'd like to see a little bit more composure, a little bit more confidence sometimes on the ball, and just in that second half, I would have liked to see them control the game a little bit more than they did. So.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. I think one thing that kind of stuck out to me in the post-match stuff, and this is part of the reason I didn't want to record immediately, because I did want to kind of hear the instant reactions from the players.
So I haven't heard anything, actually, so I'm interested to hear what you say.
So Tyler Adams came out in his post-match and was very clear that the U.S. played their game plan from the start of the game to the end of the game. And that's where I start to question more so, again, the management than the players themselves, because it's easy to sit here and say we didn't possess enough in the middle third in that second half. The midfielders look timid and panicky on the ball. And maybe he's just doing captain speech. Maybe he's trying to get that heartbeat on FIFA career mode. Maybe that's just his goal. I mean, he is the captain after all, so he probably does feel the need to stand behind.
The youngest captain in U.S. history, which is worth
Berhalter's decisions. But that tells me even more that it likely was Berhalter's decision. And it was a game that we absolutely dominated in the first half. I don't think anybody going into that game expected Wales to dominate possession throughout the game, and that first half was a lot of what I think most people expected for the first half. Wales kind of sat back and let the U.S.
First half possession was 67% U.S., 33% Wales. Second half was 50-50.
And in that first half, like, the possession itself doesn't even quite do it justice. We tweeted out, I think it was 102-19 in attacking third touches in that first half in favor of the U.S. And that's just playing completely on the front foot. I think in the first half, those three midfielders did look very good.
Yeah.
I think McKennie went kind of silent or a bit of, if you will, wizard disappearing act at times. But I think as a whole in the first half, that midfield played really well. And the comments that came out from the captain afterwards makes me hesitant to criticize the players in that midfield in the second half. Because it does sound like it may have been a tactical decision to change the flow of play and the mindset we came at.
Before we move on from right there, Dylan, before we move on, I do want to say that I genuinely thought I'm proud of the players. I really am. I think for this young team coming out in this first World Cup game, they played well. It's funny with soccer. I think more so than any other sport, you can tell when a coach is at fault for a loss. I really do. And in this game, the substitutions that were made, when they were made, the way the flow of the game kind of went in the second half, you can tell that this was a coaching decision to go into this football terrorism mode, like
content with the draw.
Which was very frustrating. Sorry to interrupt you. I don't even know if you remember where you were, but good on Tyler Adams for, not. It's a mature answer for sure. A mature answer. I think if you look at we've talked ad nauseum about attacking momentum charts on this show in our Premier League recaps. If you look at the attacking momentum chart, which I'll put it up on the video right now, it shows exactly how this game went. First half dominated by the U.S. Wales had a chance here and there. And then to start the second half, Wales came out and really dominated possession. And then kind of that last 20, 30 minutes, it just went back and forth. And that's when you saw those really conservative U.S. subs made, which were frustrating as a fan to see for sure.
And that's where if the game flow naturally, and I can't believe I'm almost coming to Greg's defense for a second time in the first 15 minutes. I would have put the over under 1.5 on that for sure. But in his defense, if the natural game flow in the first 15 minutes of that second half truly dictated that we were going to have to play on the back foot, I don't hate those substitutions quite as much.
Sure.
However, it seemed like a tactical decision in that first 15 minutes to be more content giving up that possession, to be more content sitting back.
They felt more scripted.
Try to not lose the game. Yes. And if the whole, like you said, the whole thing almost feels like I'm ready to point the finger at Berhalter. But it is hard to know what was said in that dressing room. I don't know if the game plan in the first 15 minutes was to sit on that back foot and really just try and fend off any Wales attacks, because they didn't look very menacing in that first half at all. So if that was the case, we saw a non-menacing Wales in the first half and chose to sit back in the second half. That's fully 100% on Greg, in my opinion. If it was we didn't have that conversation at halftime and the first 15 minutes just happened to play out that way, and then he made those decisions, I hate them a little bit less. Because I think for where the game was at in that point in time, I somewhat understand. All right, we're in the 70th minute. We're up 1-0 in a match that if we win, we're virtually through, and a match that if we lose, we're virtually eliminated. So let's play a little more defensive. I don't hate it from that front, but it's because we came out from the kick at half looking like we were on the back foot that I start to kind of question his tactics. And then on top of that, you have Tyler Adams. I don't want to read too much into it, but Tyler Adams coming out and saying we played our game script, we played the game the way we wanted to. It just didn't fall our way in the end. That is what kind of makes me start to question Berhalter. But it's one of those things I don't think we'll really ever know. It's kind of chicken and the egg. Was that first 15 minutes because of his decisions, or was that first 15 minutes just what happened and then he was trying to react? So
yeah,
I do want to reserve a little bit of judgment against him, and I'm trying to stay a little bit optimistic with the U.S. going forward with Berhalter as their coach, because that's not going to change in the next week. Although I did see some people on Twitter calling for Landon Donovan,
Clint Dempsey to take over.
Dempsey to just take over, and I went, yeah, sign me up. But like, obviously that's not going to happen. Obviously that would be absolutely ludicrous thing to ask. But I do. It's game one. We came out with a draw, so I'm trying not to overreact too much, despite how frustrating of a 1-1 draw that was. I do think there were parts in the midfield I did really like, and I do think there are things that Berhalter on the surface I certainly question. I think I may not question it as much if he didn't have his history, but with his history on top of what we saw today, I am still very worried about Berhalter, despite how nice that starting 11 and first 45 looked.
Yeah, the last thing on this whole strategy, well, probably not the last thing, but the last thing I'll say before we move on to the back line is you knew Wales was going to sit back. You know they're a team that plays 5 at the back. They don't want possession. Why do you even give them the opportunity to and let me say, I think that Kiefer Moore coming in at the start of the second half changed the game. He allows Wales to be more lengthy. Shout out FIFA 23, RIP the lengthy card. I think he just allows them to play more of their style. Dan James, who he came in for, is more of a pacey build-up player. You know, he's going to make those dribbles and he's going to try to run past people. With Kiefer Moore, he's a bomb it to Moore and see if he can do something at like 6'4", whatever he is height-wise. So I think going back to what I said before, if you're Greg, Wales doesn't want possession. Why do you give them the chance to make something happen? Because they're still talented players. They're still European players. They can hit you on a build up if they want to. And I think we'll talk about their goal here. Let's move on to the back line. Go ahead.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Well, last thing on that part of the managerial decisions. I think there is a good chance, and I don't want to put the whole national team stock in a manager and a single talking head. But at halftime, Alexi Lawless was making the argument, I think Greg would be better off allowing Wales to have some possession to get some, flow back in the game. And we don't want to let them on the counter because they're a team that builds off the counter and maybe they won't know what to do with possession. But like that's a systemic, again, I'm not trying to wage war on the whole of USA soccer, but like that almost seems systemic that is the mindset that one of our two biggest talking heads as a part of US soccer and the manager apparently were on the same wavelength that, hey, maybe we want to back off possession when we just had
67
more touches.
67%.
Yeah, 90 more touches in the attacking third in the first half. But yeah, let's take the foot off the gas.
No, I'll say it. That's a loser mentality is what that is.
That's
a losing mentality.
That is a US soccer mentality. Yeah. Let's not get beat. And that's where I start to have a little bit of question about this team because that's not how we're going to capitalize on this golden generation. I mean, the whole country was buzzing after that first half. Like I saw, right or wrong, I saw non-soccer people like, oh my God, the U.S. men's national team looks like Man City right now. This is unreal. We're going to win the group. Way overreactionary, but we looked damn good in that first half. That looked like that was probably the best half of U.S. soccer I've seen in 2 World Cup cycles. Like we looked phenomenal in that first half against a very good side. It's not like we were playing Saudi Arabia in the gold or Qatar in the Gold Cup or Saudi Arabia in groups. Like we were playing a real side in Wales and looked amazing. Yeah. And we just went, no, let's back off a little because we're playing into their hand. No, put your foot on their throat and finish the game. And it's like I said, it feels like it could be a systemic thing with U.S. soccer that let's just try to not lose rather than let's try and dominate this game. And I think we saw that in the midfield tactics that Berhalter employed in that second half.
Yeah, there will be a lot more to be said about this moving forward in this World Cup, kind of the U.S. mentality and how this team is coached and how the program, if you will, is run. I think it was very encouraging to hear the likes of Landon Donovan and Clinton Dempsey getting pretty frustrated with the way the game was played and tactically the way it was set up. So I think you have this next generation of who will be in charge of U.S. soccer, because Clinton Dempsey and Landon Donovan, they will eventually, one of them at least, will have some sort of leadership role within, or at least advising role within U.S. soccer. So the longer this progresses and the further down the line we get of these U.S. players kind of taking control or having a voice, I think will be better. Moving on to the back line, let's start with the fullbacks. And Serginho Dest and Anthony Robinson, I thought for what they, outside of Dest's yellow card, which we'll obviously talk about because it has big implications, I think they were both awesome at progressing on the wings. They did what they were asked to do. The final ball from both of them leaves some to be desired. Anthony Robinson, Jedi Robinson, is very smooth on the ball, very encouraged by some of his movements. He looks absolutely awesome. He will not stay at Fulham past maybe next summer. He might be for another year. He's still very young, but he's a modern day fullback to the T. Just will take a little bit more coaching to get him at his best, which I think we will see in 2026, which will be a theme with a lot of this team. And then Dest, I think he looked pretty healthy. I think him and Weah had a great combo on that right side. I thought
that right side was
lethal. Yeah, you saw Weah.
Well, it was very clear tactical decision to play down that right side, and I think it worked really well for us. And it's something I would like to see him employed like moving forward. And I don't see why it wouldn't be unless we shoehorn Reyna in on that right side just to get him minutes, which we could. But I really did enjoy watching the Destin Weah link up on that right side. And it was a very clear intentional decision in that first half.
And it wasn't your typical build up on the wings kind of through ball. They were more of a tiki-taka style. Like you saw Weah drop back, and they were more tic-tac-toe sort of with the ball. So I think if you had – I don't know how Reyna plays as like an outside mid. Like if you had swapped him in for McKinney, I think you could have seen some real lethal just technical excellence, honestly, on that side. I think McKinney isn't a guy who in close spaces, he's not a press breaker. He doesn't take that pressure super well at times. He shows flashes of brilliance on the ball sometimes, but just with the way that right side played, I think he could have gotten a lot more both inverted and overlapping if somebody a little bit more magical on the ball was in that midfield spot. But Dest and Weah played awesome off of each other. So pretty happy.
And I think I don't want to bring it back to the midfield, but kind of touching on what you just said. I think going into Black Friday, going into the England match, the team in its perfect state at this point, I would put Reyna on that kind of right side mid to link up, just as we just said. But I do think tactically it will make a little bit more sense to have McKennie there against England. So I almost think
he's just more adept defensively.
Reyna could just be left out of another starting 11, and that's what makes it so much more frustrating that we didn't see him at all today.
Yeah,
because it was a day he could have had a vast impact on the game, and we just didn't see that. And I don't think Friday's match is a match in this system that he is the better option over McKennie. So we're likely not going to see the best of Gio Reyna until Iran, and it won't be over by then, but like there's a chance we're not in a good situation. You know, if Wales goes out and wins 4-0 against Iran, like we're in a bad situation by the time we get to see Reyna in the starting 11. And it's just another frustrating thing on that right side, because I think you're right. I think that's exactly what that right side was missing at times, was that Gio Reyna link in between the two, because that right side did look really formidable at times, but at times left a little bit to be desired, especially as you said, with those fullbacks not always having the best final ball in, not having to just sling it in from the outside, being able to find that link up play in the midfield with Reyna kind of at the top of the box there would have been a really nice thing to add that I don't think McKennie quite adds as much. But that being said, Jedi Robinson is phenomenal. I absolutely love him. I think I like him more than Serginho Dest, which 2 years ago I would have laughed in your face if you said I was going to say that. But I want Jedi on Newcastle like tomorrow. I do think you're right. I think there's still a little coaching and a little bit more that is there to be offered. But his composure on the ball, his flow on the ball is phenomenal. Again, that final ball in that attacking third leaves a little bit to be desired at times, but he looked great today. He looked like everything I needed him, wanted him, hoped him to be as a U.S. men's national team fullback. So I was super pleased with him. I think Dest at times left a bit to be desired just because of the name that he brings with him. I mean, if you ask your general U.S. soccer fan, he's probably one of the three names people would know the most, I would guess, and didn't quite live up to that billing, but by no means did he necessarily play poorly in this game. I am a little concerned about the card that he picked up because obviously he'll be starting against England. Obviously, England's going to possess a lot of the ball. Opposing team possesses a lot of the ball. You're a defender. Chances go up infinitely about you picking up another card, and in the World Cup, 2 yellows is a automatic suspension the next game. So I have concerns about him being possibly available for Iran, or if he makes it through England and picks up a fluky yellow against Iran, then sweet, we might make it into the round of 16 without one of our starting fullbacks in a position that we have little to no depth in. So moving forward, I don't think he played a bad game, but that was kind of my one knock on him, was picking up that card just because of the implications it could have moving forward.
Yeah, it did feel like a little bit of a weak card, especially early on to give to him. But we don't have time to get into the refereeing in this game. We just really, quite frankly, don't. Let's talk about the center backs, and it's probably the weakest outfield group of this entire team. I thought Walker Zimmerman's foul was a bad foul to give. It was, I mean, I know it's Gareth Bale, but he's got his back to the goal. You can't make that challenge in that situation. You're, 15 minutes, 16 minutes from taking the game home, taking home 3 points, and you don't need to make that challenge. Thought overall they were fine. They really weren't asked to do a whole lot other than in some set piece play, defend some set pieces in there. As far as actually backpedaling and defending a break, there weren't too many of them. They with Zimmerman and Ream, they both look very similar, so I almost got them confused at times. But what do you think overall of the center back pairing?
I mean, outside of that foul, I thought they may have been the best position group that we've gone over so far outside of that foul. They weren't asked to do a lot, but they didn't outside of that foul.
Yeah.
Should have a little tally counter here while talking about center backs. But seriously, outside that foul, I think they played really well when they were asked to step up in that second half when we didn't possess as much. They looked very calm, cool, collected. Zimmerman had a very nice block, I believe on a Bale shot from just outside the box. Very, very calm, collected, blocked it, found his positioning after. They were both very good on the ball, and I think that's a lot of why they were both. Well, Zimmerman was a foregone conclusion, but that's a lot of the reason Ream was selected, and I think both of them, Ream included, looked very solid on the ball. So I was honestly, outside of that foul, very impressed and very pleased with our center back pairing. But like you said, it is a group that going into the World Cup was probably our biggest question mark, if not for sure our biggest question mark. So the performance overall that I saw them put forward was pleasing and promising. If I am going to take something positive away, like that's not a foul Walker Zimmerman is going to make very often. And I think everything else in his game and Tim Ream's game looked very solid. So if there is a good takeaway from that second half, it was how calm, cool, and collected those two center backs looked outside of that foul.
Yeah, I agree. We will get more of a sense of how the center back pairing plays. I'm assuming it will still be the same pairing against England.
I sure hope so. Let's not get cute.
Yeah. I think that's really all you can say about the center backs. The one time that they were really tested in and around the box, a bad foul was given. So that's definitely a mark on them or on Zimmerman there. But overall, they were fine. Matt Turner, I thought, was fantastic. He was fantastic. He almost saved Bale's penalty. Bale just had too much on it.
Unstoppable penalty. Like it truly was. Like there is like the whole lead up to the World Cup. I've been praising Courtois, and I've been praising either of Brazil's keepers, whoever they want to put out there. We both love Lloris. Like there's not a keeper in this World Cup that would have saved that penalty. There's just not. And there's not many keepers in the World Cup that would have come closer to saving that penalty than Turner. So by no means is that goal. Yeah,
he came as close as he possibly could have to saving that. Got a hand on it.
It was put like side netting, I believe, if not side netting, pretty damn close.
Almost
right
top
corner.
bins on the side. Yeah.
It was an unsavable penalty. He did everything he could. He had a really, really nice save on, I believe it was a corner. The one that was put in just middle of goal, but right on, it would have gone in right under the bar, right off the bar, and he made a really good palm save on it.
On Davies. I think that was Davies once he headed it in.
Once that save was made is really when my blood pressure started to tick up, because it was just like U.S. men's national team going to do USMNT things. Like it's coming, it's happening.
It did.
And it did. It wasn't wrong. But that save was really nice. And one of the questions on Turner is his play out of the back. And while I don't think he was a world beater in his play out of the back today, like he looked fine. He looked serviceable. I didn't go, oh no, like we all did a couple of times in qualifying. So overall, a very good game from him. Tough to fault him for the result for sure. So good rating from me. Nothing spectacular, but very solid.
That pretty much covers the starting 11. Just a few other tidbits here and there that I do want to cover, since we did get a text from our friend Aaron Salzberg today talking about the game and kind of how the game flow went, and the Wales players putting on a show on the grass, rolling around.
I thought Newcastle was bad a couple times this year.
It was
That
very
was
bad. One thing I have
infuriating.
come to learn in soccer now, this was an outlier, this was extreme, and you saw earlier in the game these tactical roll arounds to try to get fouls, and it worked. I think with Dest's yellow, it wouldn't have happened if, who was it? It might have been Dan James. Somebody like basically screamed and rolled around and got the card, and you saw on the replay he was barely touched. So I think towards the end of the game, it is a time wasting mechanism for sure. Even the people in my office were commenting on, this is what I hate about soccer. This is what I hate about soccer. And I get it.
Yep.
I get it. It's not fun to watch. But it is all tactical. It's not just them being weak, as sportsmen, as athletes. It's all tactical and either time wasting or to try to get on the refs, subconscious thinking, oh, these guys are getting beat to a pulp. So, I think, it's something that you're just going to get in soccer games. So that's kind of what I would say to the people who watched it and got frustrated. That doesn't happen every game.
Yeah,
that was excessive for sure.
Another thing, specifically on time wasting, I saw a lot of, obviously Twitter's a microcosm of football thoughts, but I saw a lot of people on Twitter complaining about the amount of stoppage time we saw across not just the US game today, but all three games today. And cause I want to say there was like 50 some odd minutes in England. That was because of a weird concussion goalie situation, but like a total of 20 in the US game and like 18 in the Netherlands game. But for me, I think they did it right because you can't and as a Newcastle fan, after complaining about Liverpool, this sounds a little funny, but you can't necessarily reward that. For me, the hard part is we need to, like, as a sport, get on the same page. Because if we are going to punish that, I want to see that punished in a September Premier League game as much as I see it punished in a November or June, typically, World Cup game. Like, I just want consistency because you have the non-soccer fans saying, this is embarrassing, this looks bad, this is stupid. But then we do punish it to turn it away. And we have the actual soccer fans saying, why is there so much stoppage time? This is unheard of. We never see this. Well, it's like, okay, we either need to punish it consistently to either rid it from the game or at least, at minimum, mitigate the impact it has on the game, or just let it fly. And it's like the difference is, as a soccer fan who follows, 4 or 5 different leagues, international, like that inconsistency is frustrating because, as a Newcastle fan, that was part of my problem against Liverpool was, okay, well, 2 weeks ago, we didn't see that implemented. And now in the World Cup, it is implemented. I'm like, okay, like at least every game in the World Cup so far, we've seen FIFA consistency, but I would like to see consistency across the board in the sport because we're just not seeing that right now. And I think that is the best way to mitigate that because as a Newcastle fan, I've said it on numerous occasions, it's frankly a little embarrassing, but if they're going to let you get away with it 9 out of 10 times, hell, I'm going to try it 10 times. And the one time I don't get away with it, I'll take my draw or my loss and move on and take my 9 wins home. But in the World Cup, at least we have seen them implement it. I mean, I think we saw 9 minutes of stoppage time in the second half of the US match, and it went beyond that because Wales was flopping around like a fish in that back half of the second half, trying to get to that draw. So I will, my God, I'm making a lot of statements I didn't think I would make today. I will applaud FIFA in their attempt to, can't believe I said that during the 2022 Qatar World Cup. I will applaud FIFA in their attempt to mitigate the advantages that some of those foul drawing, rolling around, injury acts create in a game, because that is something that I think the whole football world has been frustrated with over the past couple of years. So it's nice to see FIFA at least doing something about it, even if it looks a little wonky.
Yeah, I typically lean towards there's never enough stoppage time. Sometimes I'm watching games and it's like 1 minute. Are you kidding me? Like it took them a minute just to, go get the ball and throw it in throughout the half, let alone the rolling around and all that. So I will always, of course, if my team's winning, I want less stoppage time. But when I'm neutrally watching a game, I typically lean towards the 2 minutes. There was at least 7 minutes in there that there was time wasting. So
right.
I also enjoyed seeing the 9 minutes, and that's saying, me saying I enjoyed seeing the 9 minutes is saying something, because I knew the U.S. wouldn't do anything because of the subs that were made. We were just playing for a draw at that point. So I saw a lot about that too, but you pretty much said what needed to be said on that. I thought the officiating overall was just effectively horrible.
Subpar.
I mean, for both sides. More honestly, like, I think most objective fans will say it was more so bad for the U.S. I mean, Christian Pulisic got absolutely bullied all
He does
game.
every time he plays. He does in CONCACAF, doesn't get a call, and now we're seeing it on the world stage. It's infuriating. I mean, some of the yellows that we saw given
to the U.S.,
and we don't see. I think it was Aronson in like the 88th, maybe even in stoppage time, but very clear progression forward. Nobody in front of him. I mean, there were defenders back, but nobody immediately in front of him, gets tugged down by the shoulder, and no card after some of the questionable cards we saw in the first half against the U.S. And in a Premier League match, I'm not complaining about a card or a foul. Like, I don't care. It all evens out. But in the World Cup, cards are a big deal. And the precedent we saw in the first half on some of those U.S. cards, and in the first 3 matches leading up to this U.S. matches, it was going to be heavily carded. And if that's the approach FIFA chooses to take, again, that's fine. But I just want to see.
Then if it's going to be that card heavy, change the rule about the 2 cards and
right. Give 3 or something, or at least make it consistent. Even if you're not going to change the rule, I understand where you're coming from, but at least make it even across all teams, all matches, all groups, because the fact that the U.S. walked away with that many more cards than Wales in a game that looked on the surface very even on fouls. And I mean, you said we had 67% of possession in the first half and 50-50 in the second. So how we walk away with that many more cards when we have that much more possession? Like, we weren't playing that much more recklessly off the ball. Like, even your amateur soccer fan, even your newbie soccer fan could see that we weren't playing that recklessly off the ball. And the fact that we walk away with that many more cards in a tournament where cards can have a massive impact on that third group game. Now, we are lucky we get Iran in the third group game. So even if we are down a player or two to suspension, maybe we're the wrong team to be complaining about this in the here and now. But again, just as far as consistency goes, it is frustrating. And I think that's kind of the overarching theme in the world of soccer when it comes to officiating. Is it's not necessarily the decisions that are made, it's the consistency that those decisions are made within.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it'll be interesting to see how the officiating moves forward throughout this World Cup, because it does have the potential to have massive implications. That pretty much covers this game, guys. There are some bright spots, obviously some not so bright spots. Overall, when I woke up this morning, truly I was probably expecting a draw. And when I saw the starting lineup in the first half, I expected a 2-0 win probably, and then the frustration happens in the second half. But with Wales, I thought I literally, it looked like I was watching Tottenham. A terrible first half. They come out in the second half and they just somehow squeak by. So lots of similarities there especially with the 2 Tottenham players on the Wales side. So lots of similarities. We hope overall, if you watch this game, it was at least a little bit exciting for you. And I know you probably will watch.
I don't know how it couldn't.
Yeah, I hope the rolling.
Like, I don't know how at some point you didn't scream something, whether it's at a card, whether it's at the goal. Like, the people that say soccer is boring just aren't paying attention, because as infuriating of a match that was, there's no way you can call it boring.
Don't get turned off by the players rolling
the Netherlands
on the grass. That's the only thing I could think of.
Right. You watch the Netherlands-Senegal game, even that one, the first 75 minutes were a snooze fest. And then it was an incredibly entertaining end of the match. And this one was back and forth most of the match. And yes, again, I understand if you're American and didn't grow up with soccer, you probably don't appreciate the rolling around on the ground. Neither do I. Just accept it and just try and look past it, because there's so many exciting facets to the game outside of that. Don't let that spoil it for you.
Pretty much said it. Who's your man of the match in this one?
I mean,
Matt Turner.
Tim Weah. Like it's the second half was so uninspiring. I like have a hard time. I saw you on Twitter say Kellen Acosta for pulling down Gareth Bale, and I do love that foul, but like it is tough because it was just such a tale of two matches. Like in the second half, it's Turner. Turner didn't do anything in the first half. Weah's cool, collected finish and possession in the first half was great. So I would probably give it to one of those two, but honestly, I didn't think too much about that.
Yeah, I sprung that on you. I'll give it to Tyler Adams, 61 out of 68 passing for 90%. Six out of 9 ground duels won. He did exactly what he's going to be asked to do. He's not a ball progressing midfielder. He's not going to finish in the final third.
He'll never be that sexy guy that you go, wow, he blew me away today, but he will always put in that very solid performance. And in a game of two halves, that's a good guy to probably select, to be fair.
Well, that's all for today from the Planet Soccer Podcast. We're back again. We will be back again. However, the U.S. is back on the field same time on Black Friday against England. It'll be a tough one. So I think with that, you pray for a low goal differential. If you're feeling really optimistic, you pray for a draw. Because England looked pretty dang good today. So,
they looked. Anybody who said U.S. was winning the group is share whatever you're taking, because that must be some good stuff. Because that England team did scary.
We appreciate you guys listening. Appreciate all the support. Make sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends. Give us some comments and everything else that you do on social media. I'm Reed. That's Dylan. Thanks for watching, and we will see y'all this weekend.